The scrapyard at the edge of the Kepler belt was a graveyard of ambition. Hulks of freighters, skeletal frames of failed colony ships, and the scarred hulls of forgotten military vessels drifted in a slow, silent ballet of decay. It was here that Elias Thorne spent his days, a ghost tending to other ghosts. His hands, gnarled and stained with the oils and dirts of 100 different alloys, knew the language of stressed metal and fried circuits better than the language of men. He was a master shipwright from an era when ships were built with soul, not just extruded from automated fabricators. Now, he was just the old man at Thorne's Dock, a place pilots visited only when they were too broke or too desperate to go anywhere else. The laughter was the worst part. It echoed from the cantina at the sector's main hub, carried on comm chatter. Here Thorne bought the salvage rights to the behemoth. One pilot would say, "The old man's finally lost it, trying to polish a corpse." They called it the behemoth, a colossal wreck of unknown origin that asteroid miners had dragged in from the void. It was larger than a city-class carrier, its design utterly alien, a smooth, dark teardrop shape with no visible engines, windows, or weapons. Scans showed its power core was dead, its systems inert. It was just a mountain of exotic, yet useless, scrap. The Sector Commerce Authority, a bureaucratic behemoth in its own right, wanted it gone. Administrator Valerius had given Elias an ultimatum: scrap it for the guild, or have his dock license revoked for harboring a navigational hazard. Elias did neither. He poured his last credits, the meager savings from a lifetime of labor, into buying the full salvage rights. It was an act of madness to everyone else. To Elias, it was an act of faith. He felt an inexplicable connection to the dead ship, a pull in his soul he hadn't felt in 20 years. Not since the Odyssey. The name was a wound that never healed. The prototype explorer he had designed, the pinnacle of his career, had vanished on its maiden voyage with his son, Liam, at the helm. The official report said catastrophic system failure. Elias knew they were wrong. He had built that ship. It was perfect. This new wreck, this behemoth, it felt like an echo of his lost creation, a familiar song played in a key he couldn't quite remember. So he let them laugh. He towed the colossal Derelict to his private dock at the far end of the asteroid field and began his work. He didn't bring out the plasma cutters or the salvage drones. He started with a low-pressure chemical wash and a set of microfiber cloths. He began, by hand, to clean the wreck. The other mechanics would fly by, their comms open just long enough for him to hear their jeers. "Hey, Thorne, find any space barnacles." But Elias ignored them. He was listening to the ship, in the silence of the void, with his gloved hand moving across the cold, silent hull. He was communing with the only thing in the universe that seemed to understand his grief. He was an obsolete man tending to an obsolete vessel, two relics clinging to each other in the dark. It was a fool's errand, a mad obsession. But as he cleaned away the centuries of space dust, he began to see something beneath the grime, something that made his heart beat a little faster. The laughter would stop. He was sure of it. He just had to listen. For weeks, Elias's life was a slow, methodical ritual of cleaning and observation. He moved across the vast, curved surface of the behemoth in his small maintenance skiff, a tiny firefly against a mountain of darkness. The process was painstaking, almost meditative. He wasn't just removing grime. He was performing an autopsy, learning the ship's history from its scars. He found the faint pockmarks of micrometeoroid impacts, the scorch marks of passing too close to a star, the strange, crystalline residue of traversing an unknown nebula. He was mapping its journey, reading its unwritten log. The other inhabitants of the sector saw it as proof of his senility. Valerius sent him formal notices, each one more threatening than the last, demanding progress reports on the scrapping operation he had no intention of starting. Elias filed them away, unanswered. His focus was singular. He was beginning to uncover the ship's true skin. Beneath the layers of cosmic dust, the hull was not a uniform black. It was a mosaic of interlocking, iridescent panels that shifted from deep violet to midnight blue depending on the angle of the light. It wasn't metal. It was something else, a material that felt strangely warm to the touch, almost organic. He had never seen anything like it. It was during the third week, while working on a section near what he presumed was the bow, that he found the first true anomaly. It was a seam, a line so fine that it was nearly invisible. It wasn't a weld or a joint between plates. It was more like a scar, a place where the ship had healed itself. Driven by a hunch, he removed his thick work glove and pressed his bare palm against the seam. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a soft, internal light traced the line beneath his hand, a pulse of faint, blue energy that seemed to respond to his touch. He snatched his hand back, his heart pounding. The light faded. He tried again, pressing his hand flat against the surface. The light returned, brighter this time, spreading from the seam in a complex, fractal pattern across the hull. It was like watching neurons fire. The ship wasn't dead. It was dormant. This revelation galvanized him. His slow, reverent cleaning became a frantic search. He spent the next 2 days scanning every inch of the hull, mapping the network of glowing seams. He discovered they weren't random. They formed a coherent pattern, a circuit diagram of unimaginable complexity. He also found what he was looking for, a larger, circular seam pattern that could only be one thing: a door. There was no handle, no keypad, no visible mechanism. Just the smooth, seamless surface and the faint, glowing lines. He knew he couldn't force it. This ship didn't respond to force. It responded to touch, to intent. He placed his hands on the circle, closing his eyes. He didn't think about opening a door. He thought about entering. He thought about his desire to understand, his need to know the ship's story. He poured all his focus, all his loneliness and grief and hope into that single point of contact. The hum started then, a low, resonant frequency that vibrated not through the air, but through his bones. The circular seam glowed with brilliant intensity, and then, with a silence that was more profound than any sound, a section of the hull simply dissolved. It didn't retract or slide away. It became translucent, then transparent, revealing a dark, tunnel-like opening. The air that wafted out was ancient, sterile, and carried a faint, unidentifiable scent, like ozone and old stone. The laughter and the mockery of the outside world meant nothing now. He had been invited inside. As he tethered his skiff and prepared to enter the derelict, he felt a tremor of fear, but it was overshadowed by a powerful, unshakable sense of homecoming. He was not just a mechanic entering a wreck. He was a pilgrim who had finally reached the inner sanctum of his faith. The ship was a mystery, and he was about to become a part of it. The interior of the behemoth was a cathedral of shadows. The tunnel opened into a vast, cavernous space where the concepts of floor, ceiling, and walls seemed to blend into one continuous, flowing surface. Soft, ambient light emanated from the walls themselves, just enough to reveal the sheer scale of the chamber. The architecture was organic, as if the entire space had been grown rather than built. There were no hard angles, no visible conduits or machinery. It was silent, still, and felt impossibly ancient. Elias moved forward, his magnetic boots making soft, metallic clicks on the strange, resilient floor. He felt like an intruder in a sleeping giant's body. Passageways branched off from the main chamber, spiraling into the depths of the ship. He chose one at random, his explorer's instincts taking over. He found rooms that defied purpose, chambers filled with crystalline pillars that hummed with a latent energy, amphitheaters that seemed designed for beings of impossible size, and long, silent corridors that twisted like strands of DNA. There were no signs of a crew, no personal effects, no logs. The ship itself was the only occupant. It took him hours to find what he instinctively knew had to be the heart of the vessel, the bridge. It was the largest chamber yet, a perfect sphere. In the absolute center, suspended by an imperceptible force, was a single, throne-like chair. It was made of the same dark, iridescent material as the hull, and it was the only object in the entire room. There were no consoles, no viewports, no controls. Just the chair, waiting in the center of the silent sphere. He circled it, running his hand along its cool, smooth surface. This was a different kind of technology, a different philosophy of existence. This ship wasn't flown, it was conducted. It was an instrument waiting for a musician. He spent a full day just exploring, mapping the ship's interior, trying to comprehend its design. But his path always led him back to the bridge, back to the silent, waiting chair. He knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that all the ship's secrets were locked within it. He needed to find a way to wake it up, to give it the spark of life it had been missing for so long. He returned to the exterior and began a more invasive search, looking for an engineering section, a power core, anything that resembled technology he could understand. He eventually found it, hidden behind another seamless panel that responded to his touch. The engineering bay was a stark contrast to the rest of the ship. Here, there were familiar shapes, massive conduits, energy converters, and, at the center, a shielded sphere that could only be the power core. It was dormant, but not dead. His diagnostic kit registered a flicker of residual energy, a quantum signature that was, to his astonishment, almost identical to the core he had designed for the Odyssey. The design was more advanced, more refined, but the underlying principles were the same. The familiarity was a comfort and a deep, unsettling mystery. How could this ancient, alien vessel contain a power core so similar to his own masterpiece? He knew what he had to do. His small, aging dock generator was a firefly next to the sun, but it might be enough. It might provide the gentle nudge this sleeping giant needed to wake from its slumber. He spent the next 3 days fabricating a custom energy conduit, a delicate and complex interface that would allow him to connect his own power source to the alien core without causing a catastrophic overload. It was the most difficult and important work of his life. As he made the final connections, a proximity alert chimed on his skiff's console. A Sector Commerce Authority patrol ship, the Vigilance, was approaching. A message from Valerius appeared on his screen. "Thorn, your time is up. Our sensors are detecting unauthorized power fluctuations. You will cease your activities and prepare to be boarded." The behemoth is now under SCA jurisdiction. They had seen the faint glow from the hull. They knew he was making progress. The mockery had turned to suspicion, and suspicion was about to turn into force. He was out of time. He had one chance. It was now or never. He ignored Valerius's message and activated the power transfer. A river of energy flowed from Elias's dock into the heart of the behemoth. The conduits he'd built glowed, and the ancient power core began to hum, a sound that started deep in the bass registers and slowly climbed in pitch. It was the sound of a leviathan taking its first breath after 1,000 years' sleep. Lights began to ripple through the ship's interior, not the harsh glare of human technology, but a soft, organic luminescence that flowed through the walls like blood through veins. From the outside, the network of seams on the hull began to glow with a steady, brilliant blue light. On the bridge of the Vigilance, Valerius and his crew watched in stunned silence. The dead wreck was coming alive. The laughingstock of the sector was transforming into something beautiful and terrifying. "What is he doing?" Valerius whispered. "Get a weapons lock on that dock. I want him shut down now." Elias felt the ship's awakening through the soles of his boots. He raced back inside, back to the spherical bridge. The room was no longer dark. It was filled with a soft, ambient light, and the throne in the center was glowing, pulsing with a slow, steady rhythm like a heartbeat. It was calling to him. As he approached, the resonance in the room intensified, a feeling that was both physical and psychic. He felt the ship's immense age, its cosmic loneliness, its nascent consciousness stirring from its long dream. He knew without a doubt that this was the moment his entire life had been leading to. All the years of thankless work, the grief of his loss, the quiet obsession with the soul of machines, it had all been preparation for this. He reached the throne and hesitated for only a second. Then he sat down. The moment his body made contact, the universe exploded in his mind. He wasn't sitting on a bridge, he was the bridge. His consciousness merged with the ship's, his thoughts flowing into its systems, its ancient knowledge flowing into his mind. He felt the vast, cold emptiness of space, the warmth of distant stars, the silent passage of eons. He felt the ship's own memories, its creation by a race of beings who saw technology and life as the same thing. And then he heard the voice. It was not a sound, but a thought, clear and perfect, that bloomed in the center of his awareness. It was a voice that was both male and female, ancient and young, mechanical and deeply, profoundly alive. It spoke a single word, a name he had not heard anyone speak with such clarity in 20 years. Asterisk Elias. Asterisk, he gasped, the connection so intense it was almost painful. The ship knew him. It had been waiting for him. How? He thought, the question a desperate plea. You are the echo, the voice replied, its tone resonating with a strange, sad affection. Asterisk, the seed of your greatest creation was a memory of me. You have been calling to me your entire life, and I have been listening in my sleep. Asterisk, the truth flooded his mind then, a torrent of information that rearranged his past and redefined his future. He wasn't the ship's discoverer. He was its inheritor. The technology his company had developed for the Odyssey project, the revolutionary core design that had won him accolades, had not been his own. It had come from a piece of this very ship, a fragment discovered decades ago, its secrets reverse-engineered by scientists who never grasped its true nature. His own genius had been his unique ability to subconsciously interpret and refine the alien designs. He was a translator, a bridge between two forms of creation. He had not designed the Odyssey. He had remembered it. The ship, which now gave him its name, asterisk nomad asterisk, showed him the final piece of the puzzle, the memory that would shatter his grief and remake his world. It showed him the Odyssey on its maiden voyage, not failing, but succeeding beyond anyone's wildest dreams. His son, Liam, at the helm, had felt the same call Elias now felt. The ship his father had built was an echo of a greater song, and it was calling its children home. The Odyssey hadn't been destroyed. It had answered the call. It had been the first of a new fleet, a new partnership between human ingenuity and Nomad's ancient lineage. The memory ended with an image of Liam, older, smiling, standing on the bridge of the Odyssey, sending a message of love and understanding back through the network, a message that had been waiting for a receiver strong enough to hear it. His son was alive. The revelation that Liam was alive, a willing participant in a galactic awakening, was a balm on the raw, 20-year-old wound of Elias's grief. But there was no time for tears, no time for the profound, soul-shaking relief that washed over him. The connection with Nomad was a two-way street. As it shared its past with him, it also felt his present, his fear, his imminent danger. It felt the crude, aggressive energy of the Vigilance-S weapon systems locking onto their position. They wish to harm us, Nomad stated, its voice a calm, analytical current in his mind. Asterisk, they see that which they do not understand as a threat to be neutralized or a resource to be possessed. Asterisk, that's humanity in a nutshell. Elias thought, a flicker of his old, dry wit surfacing even in this extraordinary moment. He could feel the SCA ship's plasma cannons charging. They were out of time. Can you defend us? This vessel has no weapons, Nomad replied. Asterisk, my purpose is to create, not to destroy. However, my understanding of physical law is comprehensive. Asterisk, Elias felt a surge of inspiration, the familiar thrill of a complex engineering problem. He was no longer just Elias Thorne, the old mechanic. He was Elias Nomad, a fusion of human ingenuity and ancient, alien intellect. His mind, amplified by the ship's consciousness, saw the situation not as a battle, but as a physics equation to be solved. They're expecting a fight, Elias thought, a plan forming with crystalline clarity. Let's give them a lecture instead. He didn't need weapons. He had the universe itself as his toolbox. The Vigilance fired. Twin bolts of incandescent plasma streaked across the void, a direct hit that would have vaporized his old dock. But they never reached their target. 100 meters from Nomad's hull, Space itself seemed to ripple. The plasma bolts, traveling in a straight line, suddenly curved, their trajectory bent by a localized distortion in space-time. They looped around the massive ship and shot back towards the Vigilance, missing it by a few dozen meters but providing a terrifying demonstration of power. On the bridge of the SCA ship, Valerius and his crew stared in disbelief. What was that? The tactical officer stammered. Gravity lensing. At this scale. It's impossible. It wasn't a trick, Valerius snarled, though a tremor of fear had crept into his voice. It was a warning. Fire again. Full spread. This time, a dozen plasma bolts were launched. As they approached Nomad, Elias and the ship worked in perfect unison. Instead of bending space, they manipulated energy frequencies. They broadcast a precise harmonic resonance that targeted the magnetic containment fields of the plasma bolts. The bolts didn't explode. They simply unraveled. Their containment failed, and they dissipated into a beautiful, harmless cloud of ionized gas that drifted through space like a miniature nebula. The attack had been turned into an art installation. Valerius was speechless. His ship, a symbol of the Sector Commerce Authority's power, was being effortlessly neutralized. He had brought a club to a battle of ideas. They aren't fighting back, his first officer said in an awed whisper. They're just proving we can't win. For his final move, Elias decided on something more personal. He accessed Nomad's communication capabilities, not just broadcasting a signal, but tapping directly into the Vigilance's internal systems. The main view screen on Valerius's bridge flickered, and an image appeared. It was the face of Elias Thorne, not the weary, grease-stained old man from the dock, but a figure of calm authority, his eyes seeming to glow with a faint blue light, the throne of the Nomad visible behind him. Administrator Valerius, Elias's voice boomed through the bridge speakers, amplified by the ship's power. Your aggression is noted and has been deemed irrelevant. You are attempting to claim a sentient being, a citizen of a galactic community you are not yet aware of. This is an act of piracy. Your fleet is harmless to us, but you are not harmless to yourselves. Stand down, or I will be forced to dismantle your ship, system by system, and leave you adrift. We are leaving. I suggest you do not follow. The broadcast ended. The image of Elias vanished, leaving a stunned and terrified bridge crew in its wake. Valerius, for the first time in his adult life, was truly afraid. He had encountered a power that didn't play by his rules, a power that saw his threats as the tantrums of a child. He gave the order, his voice a choked whisper. Disengage. Take us back to the hub. Now. As the SCA ship turned to flee, Elias felt a wave of calm satisfaction. The laughter had finally stopped. The departure from the Kepler belt was a quiet, majestic affair. Nomad, no longer a derelict, but a shimmering vessel of midnight blue and violet, moved with a grace that defied its immense size. It didn't use engines. It simply glided through the void, propelled by the same subtle mastery of space-time it had used to defend itself. Elias Thorne stood on the bridge, which was no longer a silent sphere, but a breathtaking observatory. The dark walls had become a perfect, seamless viewport, offering a 360-degree view of the stars. He was no longer just sitting in the command chair. He was a part of it, the ship's consciousness a constant, welcome presence in his mind. He was the captain of a vessel that was also his oldest friend. As they left the asteroid field behind, a final, unencrypted message was sent to his old comm frequency, a message for the entire sector to hear. To those at Thorne's dock and the Kepler hub, this is Elias Thorne. I have found what I was looking for. To those who offered kindness, thank you. To those who laughed, I wish you the joy of one day being so spectacularly wrong. It was his final, quiet act of vindication. His journey was just beginning. Nomad was part of a great network, a confluence of sentient ships and their organic partners spread across the galaxy. Their purpose was not trade or conquest, but exploration and creation, a quiet mission to shepherd emerging species towards peaceful galactic citizenship. And their first destination was a rendezvous point, a place where Elias would be reunited with the son he had thought lost forever. The open loop of his life, the grief that had defined him for 2 decades, was finally closing. He was not just running from his past. He was flying towards a future that contained a piece of his heart he thought had been turned to dust. He spent the journey learning, absorbing the vast knowledge Nomad held within its memory banks. He learned the true history of the galaxy, a history far older and more complex than humanity had ever imagined. He saw the rise and fall of empires that had lasted for millions of years. He learned of the great cosmic threats and the quiet, powerful alliances that maintained the balance. He was no longer just a mechanic. He was a student, an apprentice to the universe itself. The ship, in turn, learned from him. It absorbed his lifetime of experience, his intuitive understanding of mechanics, his capacity for love, grief, and stubborn, unyielding hope. It found human creativity to be a fascinating, chaotic, and beautiful force. They were partners, teacher and student to each other. One cycle, as they passed through a vibrant, turquoise nebula, Nomad posed a question. Asterisk your species builds walls, Elias. Between worlds, between individuals. Why? Asterisk fear, I suppose, Elias thought, the answer forming as a shared concept between them. Fear of the unknown. Fear of what's different. It's easier to build a wall than a bridge. We are a bridge, Nomad stated, a simple declaration of its ultimate purpose. Asterisk and now, so are you. Asterisk the weight and honor of that statement settled upon Elias. A mantle of responsibility far greater than any he had ever known. He was humanity's first ambassador to a world of consciousness he had once only dreamed of. His journey had started in a scrapyard, amidst the laughter of small-minded men. It had been an act of faith, an old mechanic's stubborn belief that there was beauty and purpose in even the most broken things. Now he and his magnificent, living ship were a testament to that belief, a moving cathedral of hope sailing through the stars. He was finally at peace, a man who had lost everything only to find that it had been waiting for him all along in the heart of a derelict ship that had called his name across a galaxy of time and space. The future was an unknown territory, but for the first time in a very long time, Elias Thorne was not afraid. He was home.